Yo, what is going on, guys? Today I'm going to go over my top 5 picks for the best cards coming out in the Silver Tempest set. Coming out here in, less than a week from when this video comes out, actually. So, as always, I'm super excited for every new set that drops. Keep in mind, this video is all my opinion, and if you completely disagree with me, or if you think there's another Pokemon that should be on this list or a trainer card, let me know in the comments section down below. But without further ado, let's hop into the video. Alright, let's hop right into it. So my number 5 pick is going to be the Reggie Drago V-Star. This card is a 280 HP monster with 0 weakness. That is always a fantastic thing, so you don't ever have to deal with just a straight up poor matchup specifically due to type advantage or disadvantage. So Reggie Drago has a very unique attack in Dragon Dream. You get to choose the attack of any dragon type Pokemon in your discard pile and use it as this attack. So if the attack costs something awkward like steel, lightning, water, colorless, it doesn't matter because Dragon Dream just copies the attack and still uses the attack cost of Dragon Dream. So it costs fire and fire double grass no matter what. So even if you have a bunch of different dragon types with different attack costs, that is completely irrelevant. So how do you get these dragon Pokemon in the discard pile? That's where its V-Star power, Legacy Star, comes into play. Once during your turn, you can discard the top 7 cards of your deck, and then choose up to 2 cards from your discard pile, reveal them, and put them in your hand. So this is one way to get those Pokemon, those dragon Pokemon in the discard pile for you to copy their attacks. Additionally, something to note is you don't actually have to grab 2 cards from your discard pile that you discarded. So you can just discard the top 7 and maybe grab, I don't know, Boss and Energy or whatever you might need. You can grab a card that was in there 2 turns ago. Not just a card that you discarded just that moment with the Legacy Star V-Star power. Now, we've seen Pokemon like this with the attacks like Dragon Dream be really strong in the past. The best example that I can think of is Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX. They were able to copy the attacks of any GX or EX Pokemon in the discard pile or on your bench. So this attack is very similar in that regard. The only difference, of course, is Mewtwo and Mew had to have the same attack cost. So, as I mentioned before, Dragon Dream can copy any Dragon-type Pokemon's attack, so this card is actually only as good as the Dragon Pokemon that are legal in the format. If you've got bad Dragon Pokemon, this Pokemon is essentially useless. But in this set, we're getting some great support for this. We are getting a Dragonite, a baby Dragonite, a Stage 2. This card allows you to do a really solid amount of damage, and it allows you to accelerate energy onto your next Reggie Drago. So once you get this first Reggie Drago set up, it's a little easier to kind of chain your Reggie Drago into Reggie Drago because you'll be able to use this attack. I believe it's called Energy Hurricane, and accelerate 3 energy, basic energy, onto your next Reggie Drago. And like I said, 180 damage, it's pretty solid. It's definitely a really cool Pokemon for this deck. You also have cards like Duraludon with the G-Max Pulverization, which you can copy. So if you're faced with a Miltank, doesn't matter. You can just go right through it. You also have attacks from Giratina V-Star. You can use Lost Impact, which is incredible. 200, you can take big one-hit KOs with this deck as well, and also have the versatility to use other attacks when you need it. So overall, I think this Pokemon is pretty solid. I think it's going to be really fun, and we'll see how it shapes up in the coming format. So, I'm sure no surprise, my next pick for one of the best cards out of this set is Regieleki VMAX. Now, the most important thing about this Pokemon is that we finally have a Regieleki with free retreat. This Pokemon, it just has made no sense to me. This Pokemon has the highest speed stat of any Pokemon ever. It is the fastest Pokemon in the game. Yet the Regieleki cards we've had have had 2 upwards of 3 retreat cost, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. But now we have a free retreat Regieleki, so already right there. insane, right? But looking at the kit, which actually makes this Pokemon really strong, we have the Transistor ability, which says the attacks of your basic lightning Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Right then and there, the Pokemon is already incredible. This ability is so strong at really beefing up some other basic lightning types. Then you also have the Max Thunder Strike attack. 220 damage for 3. Regieleki is no slouch. Of course, the condition is you can't attack during your next turn, but that's not really a problem because you have free retreat, so you can kind of just free retreat into your next attacker. So, Regieleki can also do some pretty solid damage. A support Pokemon with 310 hit points is nothing to scoff at for sure. But this Pokemon has seen lots of play in decks in Japan with cards like Vikavolt V. Vikavolt V has the Paralyzing Bolt attack, does 50 damage, and it item locks. Incredibly strong. Item lock has been, in the history of the Pokemon trading card game, has always been good. The ability to essentially stop your opponent from doing anything if they don't have any board-based draw, or any way to thin their hand down to draw cards with some of their support Pokemon, or anything like that. Being able to item lock someone is ridiculous. Downside of Vikavolt, only does 50 damage, so not very much. But with a Transistor in play, it does 80. Choice Belt, you're up to 110. You know, then you're doing some actual damage. And these abilities stack. So you can do potentially 60 extra damage, which means you're doing 110 with 2 Transistors, Choice Belt, then you're pumping out 140, then you're doing some real numbers with a 2 energy attack. It is kind of ridiculous, and then you item lock them. There's also Raikou V with the Lightning Rondo that does more damage for both of you and your opponent's bench Pokemon. Well, a Regieleki VMAX essentially adds 50 damage to the attack when you have a Regieleki VMAX on board, which is kind of crazy. Plus, with the Fleet Foot ability from Raikou V, you always have a way to just draw an additional card. So really solid picks. I mean, I think this card is pretty solid. You even got cards like, if you want to jump into the expanded ladder, you've got cards like Pikarom, which could actually benefit from cards like this, having a big basic that can do more and more damage. Keep in mind, in expanded, you've got stuff like Electro Powers to buff the damage even more. Those were the power tablets of the Sun and Moon era for lightning Pokemon. I will definitely be playing with that deck for sure, and I'm definitely going to be playing with all of these decks on the channel here soon, once the set drops in less than a week. So let's get into the next one. So I did forget to put the name on this one, but this is the Forest Seal Stone. It is a Pokemon tool card that gives the Pokemon V it's attached to a V-Star power. Now we're getting another stone card in this set, but it is, in my opinion, not going to be as strong as this card. Now, when you attach this to a Pokemon V, it gives them the V-Star power Star Alchemy. That means during your turn, and when you use your V-Star power, you can search your deck for any one card and put it into your hand. Ridiculous. This is a mini Starbirth on a tool card. I cannot even begin to explain how strong this card is. Now, of course, there are the obvious Pokemon that want to have this, the obvious decks like Mew. If you play this in Mew, this essentially makes your deck a 59 card deck or a 58 card deck, because this card can be any card you want it to be. You need a Battle VIP Pass turn 1, this card counts as a 5th Battle VIP Pass. And in decks like Mew that don't have a V-Star power, this card is just so incredible. You slap it on a Genesect because you want a Choice Belt on your Mew, of course, and then bam, grab whatever cards you want out of your deck. It is a ridiculously good card. Now, Mew is not the only deck that can actually take advantage of this. There are so many other decks that might have a lackluster V-Star power or lack of V-Star power altogether that might want to use this card. Even in decks that just play Crobat V or Lumineon, if there's a single prize deck that plays those support Pokemon to draw them cards, you can play this card, slap it on a Crobat or a Lumineon, and bam, V-Star power. So it is such a solid card. Like I said, you can implement it in almost any deck. Now, of course, there are a lot of decks that kind of rely on their V-Star power to do what they need to do. Like, for example, most Arceus decks are going to use Starbirth to grab whatever 2 cards they want. You know, Palkia is most likely going to use Star Portal. There was, like I said, these decks kind of want to use those V-Star powers because they synergize too well with their deck. But any deck that doesn't have a V-Star power like that, Forest Seal Stone, this is your guy right here. This card is a really cool, and I can't wait to test out what decks it's truly going to shine in. So the next card we're going to be talking about is going to be another trainer card. This card being Serena. By the way, there is a full art of this in the set, and it is probably going to be one of my chase cards. I'm not gonna lie, it looks so nice. But anyways, moving on to the effect of this card. This card actually has 2 effects that you can use at your own leisure. It's incredible. Having 2 effects on a supporter card has historically been good. I mean, there's been cards like Tate and Liza, which have a draw and switch effect. So it's very versatile. It lets you do whatever you need to do in the moment when you have that supporter card, and Serena kind of fits that bill. You get to discard up to 3 cards from your hand. You have to discard at least 1, and then fill your hand to 5. It's a draw supporter, which is incredibly cool because you can thin maybe bad cards out of your hand or cards you don't need, pitch them, and fill your hand to 5. Then you also have a gust effect. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon V with their active. So you have Boss's Orders and a draw supporter in 1 card. Need I say more? All right, moving on to the next card. No, I'm just kidding. But this card is so powerful. There are so many decks that want to discard cards from their hand, like Mew, like Reggie. Reggie's, for example, they want to discard their energy and then fill their hand up so they can accelerate it with Regigigas. Now, you can also use it to gust, take multiple prizes on benched Pokemon since you can hit multiple Pokemon for weakness in Regigiga, in the Reggie deck. So there are a few decks that are definitely going to take advantage of this for sure. And a lot of decks might just play this card as just like a straight one-of because you can essentially just replace your one of your boss's orders. Because a lot of times when you're using a boss's orders, you're gusting out a Pokemon V. You're gusting up a Crobat for game, or you're swinging into one of their damaged Pokemon V that they maybe retreated to on the bench. So the downside of it being only Pokemon V is... I don't think it's as terrible as one might think. The only gripe that I have with this card coming out in Silver Tempest is the fact that Pokemon V aren't going to rule the meta for very much longer. When we get our first Scarlet and Violet set, we're going to be getting Pokemon EX, which means Serena will only, most of the time, be drawing cards and not gusting out Pokemon V. Because when those EXs hit the format, maybe half the format's going to be Pokemon EX and half the format's going to be Pokemon V. Which means half the time, you're going to have kind of a dead card in your hand or a card that's maybe not as strong in every situation. So having this card at the end of the Sword and Shield format is a little sad, but I still think the card is going to be incredibly powerful, and I definitely think it's going to see so much play in the next, 3 or 4 months till we get our first Scarlet and Violet set. What a surprise, right? Lugia V-Star, one of the poster boys of the set. It's going to be my top pick for being the best card to come out of this set. This card is so strong. At first glance, it might not seem as strong because you've got the Storm Dive attack for 4 energy, does 220 damage. 220 for 4? Not so great. Yeah, you do have the ability also to discard a stadium in play. Also, really solid effect. It says you may, so you don't always have to discard a stadium. This is really solid because it actually allows you to bump Path to the Peak. And other potentially harmful stadiums. But Storm Dive, little lackluster, but there are some great cards in this set to actually make this attack extremely powerful. Now, before we get into that, let's look at the V-Star power. We have the Assemble Star. once during your turn, of course, you can only use 1 V-Star power per game. You can choose up to 2 colorless Pokemon from your discard pile, except rule box Pokemon, so VGX, anything like that, Radiant Pokemon, whatever it may be, and put them directly onto your bench. Really solid ability. That means this, but once again, we run into a kind of similar effect to Reggie Drago. This ability is only as strong as the colorless Pokemon in the format. Well, another card coming out in this set that is going to be Lugia's best friend is going to be Archeops. This Archeops has an incredible ability. The ability Primal Turbo that allows you to accelerate 2 special energy from your deck onto your Pokemon. So, you get 2 Archeops in the discard pile, and then bam, Lugia's V-Star power, and then you can accelerate 4 energy. Now, those energies are most likely going to be powerful colorless. And powerful colorless stack, you do 20 extra damage for each powerful colorless attached to your normal type Pokemon, which means if you have 4 on this bad boy, you are doing 300 damage, and you can easily build up to that 4 energy attack cost, which seems terrible at first, but is actually so strong. This thing can hit some insane numbers, and it can also utilize all the other solid special energy in the format. You can use gift energy, or not gift energy, V-Guard energy, which adds damage reduction to your Lugia, making it tankier. You've got the Lucky Energy, which means when you get hit, you get to draw an additional card. You have Double Turbo in emergency situations. Like, you've got really solid special energy to actually make Lugia really, really powerful. And I think this card is going to be decently strong. I mean, we are getting Lightning-type Pokemon in this set. Well, Dunsparce exists, completely removing Lugia's weakness. So I think this card has potential to be a force to be reckoned with in the format. Now, is this set going to be as impactful as something like Lost Origin? Probably not. Lost Origin brought so much to the metagame with the Lost Zone engine, the Lost Zone mechanic. He brought it back. I mean, you have Giratina decks, Lost Box decks, you have amazing rares, and so many decks play that engine, and it was completely meta-defining. So, we'll see if Lugia and Archeops can also shift the meta and make people fear them and build their decks to try and counter Lugia V-Star. So the last cards I want to go over were some honorable mentions. We are getting some pretty unique Radiant Pokemon in this set. We have Radiant Jirachi, which has the ability when it's knocked out, you get to search your deck for any 3 cards. This card is, in theory, it's incredible. You get to search for any card you need to set up. But if your opponent can Escape Rope or Gust or Boss's Orders around the Jirachi, it essentially becomes a wasted Radiant Pokemon. Now, if they can, then you're in business. But it seems a bit too niche for its ability to really shine. You also have a unique attack that allows you to flip 2 coins, and if both are heads, you just auto knock out your opponent's Pokemon. You and I both know we're gonna get salty because someone's gonna flip double heads, and we're gonna be mad about it. It's gonna be so frustrating. But it has definitely an attack you can potentially build around. Then we've got Radiant Alakazam. Radiant Alakazam allows you to move 2 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another one of your opponent's Pokemon. It's solid. It has the ability to move damage. We've seen abilities like this on the past be really solid, but will this Pokemon find a home in a deck? Because when you're building a deck and you put a Radiant Pokemon in it, you have to ask, okay, is this better than Greninja? That's the question. Or Charizard. Some of the better Radiant Pokemon in the format. So we'll have to see. This could definitely find a home in Lost Boxes, spread decks, who knows. But the last Radiant Pokemon that we're going to look at is Radiant Serena. Radiant Serena has the ability to heal 20 damage from each of your Pokemon. Pretty solid, really good in tank and heal style decks. The main tank and heal deck we have right now is Arceus Gudra, which is currently plays Radiant Gardevoir as their Radiant Pokemon of choice. Radiant Gardevoir is a bit stronger right now because it just it forces your opponent to hit bigger numbers as opposed to just healing off what they hit. Because if your opponent can one-hit KO you without the Gardevoir, or, you know, if you don't have Gardevoir in play, if they're one-shotting you, then, I mean, you're not alive to heal with Serena. So Gardevoir is objectively a little better right now because it reduces the damage from Pokemon V. But when the format changes and we get EXs into the format, as I mentioned earlier, this card might become better than Gardevoir because if half the format is EXs, Gardevoir is essentially a dead card against half the cards in the game. Whereas Serena will be able to allow you to effectively heal more damage over the course of a game. So a really solid Pokemon overall, just not super hot right now. Next up, we have everyone's favorite Snowy, or Alolan Vulpix. Really cool to see a not fully evolved Pokemon as a V-Star. Really cool. I mean, you gotta say, hey, it's a water Pokemon. You could probably pair it with Palkia, and it's probably good. You put anything with Palkia, and it's good. It has a unique V-Star power that does 70 damage for each of your opponent's Pokemon in play, or Pokemon V in play, should I say. So, solid V-Star power. I mean, it's free, but the question is, do you want to use this over something like Star Portal? But the main draw of using this Pokemon is its attack. For 3 energy, it does 160, so it's okay. But it goes through all effects, which is awesome. Goes through Miltank, so on and so forth. But then it prevents all damage done to this Pokemon next turn from Pokemon with abilities. Wow, I mean, we've got so many Pokemon in the format with abilities. We've got Arceus, we've got Palkia, we've got the Radiant Pokemon like Radiant Charizard. I mean, any deck that has an ability that attacks, I mean, just does nothing. But this deck can fall prey to the same effect of Rope Boss. Get it out of the active spot, or rope it, boss it back in, and then KO it because it only has 240 hit points. So it is a little lackluster, but I think it has potential to actually just shut out and auto-win some matchups if your opponent can't get around it. Now, the last card I want to look at is V-Guard Energy. This card is so solid. It reduces the damage this Pokemon takes that it's attached to from Pokemon V, and the ability does not stack. So, in decks like Arceus Goodra, who want to tank hits and heal it off, this is an incredible card. Making your opponent, with Goodra, it does 80 damage reduction, plus another 30 from V-Guard Energy. You're up to 110. With Gardevoir in play, that's 130 damage reduction. That's insane. Even on cards like Lugia, it gives Lugia effectively 310 hit points. So, I think this card has a lot of potential to be really solid in a lot of decks in the format. I mean, it can denying your opponent prize cards, if they can't knock it out, that is a good turn for you in my book. If you guys have made it this far into the video, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you guys want more Silver Tempest content, like the video and subscribe to the channel because I will definitely be doing more Silver Tempest videos, playing with all these new decks coming out from the set. I'll be opening a booster box and all of that good stuff. But thank you again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.